So, welcome back to the next episode, or / thank you for hanging in there.
Yes, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, both of you. My wife being one of them. I promise we're reaching the end, but we do have some more things that we want to cover. Actually, the whole, the genesis of this episode started with this next idea that I came up with, which was what we're kind of calling like Friday the 13th All-Stars. And even, Greg, you were kind of struggling with this idea at the beginning. And so you kind of were like, hey, can you consolidate this down into a single sentence or something so I know what this is? And I'm like, okay, that's going to help. So I'm just going to read that sentence. Because
the mission statement.
Exactly, because I think it'll be helpful for the people to understand what we're doing here. But the idea is that you and I, me and Greg, are placed in the Friday the 13th universe. And we are going to pull from the entire catalog of movies of how we would construct our ideal story / scenario / outcome using these kind of predetermined categories. And I think it'll start to make sense as we start to announce the categories and hear answers. But it's kind of like a draft, and we have the entire franchise, Friday the 13th franchise, to pull from. So the first category is, what is the defensive weapon that you use to try to fight off Jason?
I thought about this long and hard. There are so many to choose from. But what I settled on was a boulder on a chain like Tommy uses in part 6, only I would swing it around like a wrecking ball.
Okay. That's fine. I allow it. My answer goes against everything that I believe in, but I'm going to go with Nancy, the little female camper in Jason Lives.
You're going to use prayer?
Yeah, her bear with me. Her weapon was the power of prayer because she closed her eyes, said a prayer, and Jason disappeared. It's more effective than a gun. It's more effective than a knife. And it's certainly more effective than Tina powers. It was, as far as we know, it's the only thing that actually made Jason disappear.
I think it's bullshit because I think what stopped him was that she was a little girl. So unless you can make yourself a little girl.
Agree to disagree.
Wow. Okay. Taking it to a much more earthly plane, what vehicle or mode of transportation would you choose?
Despite the fact that it would be way too small for my freakish frame, I'm going to go with Clay's motorcycle. And
I want to see that movie.
Right. And the reason is I just feel like a motorcycle is a more adaptable mode of transportation in terms of trying to get away. Cars are limited. There's only certain terrain that you can drive on in a car, depending on the type of car, obviously. But you are, for the most part, limited to roads in a car. Plus, you have to have wide enough spaces for the car to get through. But if I'm on a motorcycle, I could, potentially drive through the woods. I can go between trees, and I have, as far as I'm concerned, a better chance of getting away.
If Clay's motorcycle was less dorky, I that's a great answer. But oh my God, you would look so hilarious riding that little thing. He looked hilarious riding that little thing, and I think
I look hilarious in general, but on a motorcycle even more so.
I think you're taller than he is.
I think we're the same height. Yeah, 6'4", 6'5". But yeah.
I chose Chris's battle van from part 3. I kind of love that it's almost like a mobile man cave, and then the fact that it has that little reserve tank. I think that thing would hold up under some punishment.
Yeah, I like that. It did make me think about how, and this is not something that we are, revealing for the first time, but there's just so many automobiles in these movies that just don't start the first time.
Right.
So that supports your idea of why would a car not start? Well, it probably is out of gas or something. Potentially the battery's dead, but at least in the van that you pick, there is a reserve tank, so you have a little bit of a backup. So yeah, cool pick. So next up is location, and the way we defined this one is what season, what weather conditions are taking place in your, ideal, in the scenario that you're in.
That's not how I understood it at all. Let's leave it in. Huh. I picked a specific location.
You can do that too.
Okay.
I have a specific location so I have a location and weather.
Oh, okay. I mean, I like the weather element.
Okay. You can just add the weather to it. But I have location and weather.
Oh, okay. So. That's cool. I was gonna choose Packanack from part 2, but I'm gonna rant for a second because I love the sound of my own voice. Because of the Friday the 13th video game, I have a very complicated relationship with Packanack Lodge. That was a map. Packanack Small was a map in that game that people online began choosing almost incessantly because it's the easiest one in which to kill Jason. And so anytime I would log on, hoping to play a fun round of that game online, some person would choose Packanack Small as the map that we were running around in. So I've played that map 200 times, and it just got to be so annoying that I now actively dislike the words Packanack Small. So I couldn't bring myself to choose that for a location. So I chose Alice's house from part 2 because it has cats flying all over the place. Season. I like the weather. I like that. That's an interesting wrinkle I hadn't really thought about. But
or weather condition. It doesn't have to be like a particular season.
Right. I mean, not the weird, nonsensical wind from part 3. They couldn't use rain because it would mess with the 3D cameras, so they had to just have it be kind of windy and not too rainy. I think part 5 is a little bit too rainy. I do like a storm here and there, so I think I'll probably go with part 1 with the storm coming down the valley like a son of a gun.
I went with Higgins Haven, and the reason why is because I think I stand the best chance of, and I kind of tried to approach a lot of these things as like I'm trying to stay, survive Jason, get away from Jason, or whatever. So what provides me that best chance? So I picked Higgins Haven because it's a big house, and I'll take my chances in a big house because I have rooms to hide in. I'm more likely to hear Jason coming. If I know he's in the next room, I can plan my next move in terms of jumping out the window or going down the hall or whatever. And then the weather condition I picked was actually wind. And the reason why I did that was because it, again, provides the best chance of sound disguise.
Oh,
if
good.
There's noise
Good
from
point.
the wind, shutters banging, things like that, it's going to cover up the fact that I'm trying to climb out a window, run down the hall, whatever. So I just felt like that was the more consistent weather option that would provide some sort of advantage, to me.
I like how strategically you're thinking about this. Yeah, Higgins Haven's great, and I considered that one because I just like that house. Over the summer, I went to a lake vacation with my wife's family, and we stayed in a place that reminded me a lot of Higgins Haven, and it had a coziness. It even had kind of a staircase that was similar to the Higgins Haven staircase.
In the sense that it had stairs.
It was placed similarly in the house. It wasn't like the same spiral construction, but I think you would have agreed that it was a very Higgins Haven-esque lodge to stay in. But I like how you're really using this, tactically. That's great. What Jason would you want to face?
So I got to, cheated again. 2 answers, but I'll be quick. I couldn't decide between the Jason Takes Manhattan version because he's like a confused, stupid Jason. At least that's how I view him. But in the end, I ended up going with Jason Goes to Hell because I'll take my chances of not letting a TV reporter get close enough to French kiss a demon worm down my throat.
Or shave you.
Exactly. So I feel like that's probably my best chance of survival.
Nice. Okay. I mean, I was kind of thinking along the same lines, and I almost went with part 6 Jason just because he's not that scary. He does some cool shit, and he's pretty lethal, but he's not He's not menacing in that movie. He's kind of fun. But I decided to go with part 2 because he's such a rookie in that movie that, like I said, he falls down a lot.
Yeah.
He's kind of a doofus. And I think I would last longer against him.
I like that because, he is kind of clumsy. And, it's almost like a baby, like a grown-up baby. He's just kind of like, and just like stumbling into things. So in the unfortunate circumstance that Jason has you cornered and he is about to kill you, what weapon would you want him to kill you with?
I'm going to hedge my bets again here. I almost said throwing darts from part 6 because you could theoretically dodge them. And he may not be as good at those as he is with other things. And they don't go as fast, et cetera, et cetera. But I decided on a bucket of liquid nitrogen. Because I think it would be kind of easy to avoid getting dunked.
Oh, so you saw it more as your chance to escape, not
Yes.
what he actually kills you with.
Right, not how I want to die.
Okay.
You can go in whatever, I now I'm interested to hear what you're going to say.
Right. I approached it as I'm cornered, I've screwed up.
You're dead. How are you going to die?
Right. How would I
Nice.
prefer to go?
Okay, lay it on me.
So speaking of hedging bets, I went with pruning shears. Because
Applause. Let's just pause and give Brian the respect he deserves. Nice.
Because, if I'm going to go, I want to go, and it's not going to be pleasant. There's no way around it. But, if you're going to go the way of, Deborah Voorhees in A New Beginning, get those pruning shears in the eyes and have them, just...
It's dramatic. I'll give you that.
It is, yeah. It's much better than, getting stabbed in the gut or something. I feel like I would hope that it would be a pretty quick ending, but... I would like to think that there would be a second or two of realization where I know I'm going to die, and I think to myself, well, at least it's by pruning shears.
I hope that for you too, Brian.
Right? Someone out there is going to really appreciate the fact that that's how I die.
Or if you do die that way, it's going to be we got a problem here. Somebody's listening to this show.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Do not give out your address on the air. Who's the girlfriend you show up at camp with?
It's Ginny. I know she's come up before, but she's the one that I would most likely be in a relationship with. If I look at all these different characters, she's the one that lines up with the type of girl I'm looking for, type of girl I want to be with. So yeah, I'm showing up with Ginny.
Right on. I kind of decided to go in the opposite direction from the girl you take home to mom and dad with. And I decided to go with more of a party girl for showing up to camp, and I went with Sam from part 4.
Oh.
Because she was no dimwit. She seemed like a savvy, interesting person, but also DTF, and cute. And
Yeah.
I thought that would be it's not going to be a lasting relationship, but I think we would both have a good time.
It's definitely not going to be lasting if you're in a raft. Okay, so as is the case in life, you show up to camp with a girlfriend, but there's another girl at camp who's going to be a little bit of a threat. Either they are going to be aggressive and trying to break you up, or you're going to see this girl and you're going to be like, hey, wait a second, who's that? So who's the threat?
I went back to 12-year-old Greg, and I asked him who the threat would be. I've already got a party girl that I'm at camp with, so who would kick that up a notch and lure me away from, a girl I'm having a good time with already? And I went with Nikki from part 6.
Oh.
I like her RV. She's probably demanding of more stamina than I've got. Even 12-year-old Greg could achieve, but
More than one song.
But I went with Nikki because she was one of his favorites as a kid.
So, no offense, but Nikki or you would not be someone that Nikki would necessarily be attracted to.
No.
Okay, so you're viewing it as, hey, she's
I'm
pretty
not
cool.
me. I'm like the idealized guy who could get any of these.
Okay, gotcha.
No.
Okay.
No. I have no delusions about my chances with any of these women.
Right.
Pam, Sam, Nikki,
Demon.
I mean, I probably would have a tough time hooking up with Shelley.
My threat is a very minor character, but it's Alexis from Jason Goes to Hell. She was the third wheel of the camping crew
Oh, right.
who very
Nice.
aggressively and very quickly asked Steven to go skinny dipping after only being in the car with them for like 2 minutes. Not typically the type of girl that I'd be interested in, like someone that would be that aggressive that soon. But at the same time, because she's that aggressive that soon, and she's also really cute, I'd be like, oh, I don't know.
Well, and
This
she
girl
obviously
sounds
likes big dorks, so right back at you.
like- right. So yeah, that's my pick.
That's a good one. I like that. What year or era would you want this to take place in?
I picked the early 80s. So basically anything that takes place in the first 4 movies. I love the idea, even though it's to my disadvantage, I love the idea of this like primitive world where I don't have access to cell phones or easy forms of communication where I can ask for help. Like I'm truly at the mercy of my environment. And again, that's not to my advantage, but I feel like that would be like if I'm going to be in a shitty situation, that would kind of be a cool time to be in that shitty situation, because there's a lot of times where I'll watch movies now where it's very easy to look at it and be like, well, if they had a cell phone, this movie would be over in the first 5 minutes or, something like that. I don't want that out. Like if I'm going to get a story out of this, assuming I'm going to survive this encounter, whatever I'm about to experience, I want the odds to be stacked against me.
Nice, and I like that you addressed the technology issues. That's a good observation. I chose 1986, which was not when Part 6 would have taken place because of the timeline, but when Part 6 came out. So when it was filmed, it was 85, 86. I was 12 years old, and I have plenty of. As you may have guessed, I was a dork. And I have plenty of memories of 1986 that make me cringe, but I was 12 years old, and I feel like that was, a year that I began remembering having some agency in my life. I could begin to watch what I wanted to watch. I had a little more independence. I was years away from driving, but I have a lot of fond memories of 1986 and that time of my life. So it's a nostalgic choice, but that's what I went with. And I went to camp for the first time that year.
Okay, so you've done everything that you can, but now you find yourself in a final battle with Mr. Voorhees. And you're allowed to take one person with you to help in this fight. Who are you taking?
There is one person in the entire saga of Friday the 13th that I think stands any sort of chance against Jason Voorhees. And that's Vic from Part 5. He is a rage machine. And I think is the only person who's even scarier than Jason Voorhees. So if he's on my side, I want Vic in my corner.
Nice. I was stifling laughter while I was waiting for you to answer because I thought I knew what you were going to say, and that's not at all what I thought. But it's perfect. Like, you're right. Have we ever seen someone with such a hair trigger as Vic? Like, he just, like, a quick argument about a candy bar and he axes a dude to death.
Who did you think I was going to pick?
Well, my pick, which is Demon.
Oh.
Because I feel like Demon has street smarts. He's been around the block. He gets it. He's probably been in lots of fights before. You can certainly argue like the crew of like Ali and Fox and Loco would be good, but I just feel like Demon is just smarter. Like, he's just smarter. Like, he's got street smarts, but he's also probably good at fighting. And as long as he hadn't had an enchilada right before the battle.
Well, he could put that to good use. I mean, I'm never going to turn down hanging out with Demon.
Right.
So
Yeah. I gotta
that's-
find a way to introduce them back into the story.
And I love how much part 5 is coming up in these discussions.
Quite a
given
bit, yeah.
how that's, I'm guessing, kind of in the middle of our rankings of the
Yeah.
saga overall.
All right. So obviously, when you go to camp, you're going to be assigned to a certain cabin, and you're going to have to share a bunk with someone. If you were forced to share a bunk with someone, but you hope that that person gets killed for whatever reason, who's your bunkmate?
Because I hope they get killed, I'm going to pick Creighton Duke.
Ooh.
He would be the worst bunkmate in the world. He would be so obnoxious. He would be trying to break your fingers through the slats of the bed. He would just be yammering nonstop and just insufferable.
Talking about hot dogs and donuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, ugh, this would be the worst 2 nights of my life, but he gets killed. So
Yeah. That's pretty good. I wish I had come up with that one because that makes total sense. Yeah, he's the exact definition of a poor bunkmate for every reason you just said. Like, he just doesn't shut up, and you're just like, dude, like, you're stuck with him. Like, oh, I love that pick. Mine is a little bit more pedestrian, but I went with Tamara from Jason Takes Manhattan. She's just a bitch, and she's just spoiled, and she only thinks about herself. And I think there's many reasons why. I mean, this sounds terrible to say, but like many reasons why she deserves to die. But she would just be like, I just imagine her as a bunkmate. Like, oh, this isn't as comfortable as my 1,000 thread count sheets at home, and this is so. Where's my humidifier? And like, for different reasons, but similar reasons of Creighton Duke, you're like, shut up.
Right. Right. She may be easy on the eyes, but that's going to wear thin real quick.
Yeah.
Good call. Plus, she seems to hog the shower. She was in that shower for a long time.
Yeah.
So she'd use up all the hot
And the
water.
mirror.
Yeah. Oh. Now, you're not going to get on Jason's radar unless you commit some sort of moral sin or insult. So, what moral transgression would you choose to commit that would put you on Jason's radar? For example, I considered wearing lace-up elf boots like Dr. Matt from Part 5, but I went with pouring a drink on Jason's head like Sissy does in Part 6. I think Jason might have let her live if she hadn't leaned out the window and poured a can of soda on him.
Possibly. Doubtful, but possible. I approached this one a little bit differently, but I feel like it's kind of the same, which is like a decision that I make that puts me in a position to get killed, either directly, something I do to Jason, or something indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, and I hate to say it because I love it, but my big mistake was eating my beloved Skyline chili, which is a local Cincinnati delicacy. I don't care if you like it or not. That's not the point. But it tends to wreak havoc on my digestive system. And my big mistake would be eating it earlier in the night and having an upset stomach and trying to get away, but can't because I have to go take care of business either in the toilet or in the woods.
So
or something.
basically, your demon is what you're. That's
right,
from
exactly.
Keeping it
Yeah.
in the franchise. Your demon. You have a
Precisely.
bad cheese coney instead of an enchilada.
Exactly.
There you go. Right on.
That's one of my biggest fears, just in general in life, is like being on being on the Golden Gate Bridge, stuck in traffic in a car, and having to take a dump.
The bay is right below you.
But like, that's a much more kind of like harmless version. Like, my life is not in danger there. It's just more of a terrible predicament to be in. But like the idea of like being in the middle of a chase, like Jason's chasing me through the woods, and I'm like, oh god, and I gotta go like,
Oh my
pop
god!
a squat.
Okay, I'm gonna have a bad dream about that tonight. We actually just had Skyline today, so that's within the realm of possibility.
Right.
Holy shit!
So slightly different than how you defined it, but I think it still puts us
Yep.
both in similar situations.
That's a pretty damn great answer because it's very relatable.
Before we get to the final question of this segment, we did something similar that we did earlier, which was we came up with some wild card questions that you couldn't prepare for in advance. So a little bit of putting you on the spot. And mine is a little convoluted, and you might need some assistance, and so I've provided a little cheat sheet to help you along the way.
Uh-oh.
It requires some pre-work. But if you could replace each final girl and place them in another Friday the 13th movie that you would like to see them in. So, for example...
Do I got to do all 12?
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
That's why I made a list, and I'll just go down the list, and you can come up. And I also understand it'd be hard to keep track of which movies you've used and which movies you haven't. So if there's crossovers, I don't care. I'm gonna let it slide because it's gonna get too messy. Of like, well, wait, have I talked about Jason X yet or whatever? So
just heads up, my wild card question is a lot simpler.
Right, and I understand this is kind of a mess, but like. I think you get the idea, but it's like you take Alex from Friday the 13th, or Alice from Friday the 13th, and you'd like to see her in Jason X or something. And it's completely arbitrary. You don't have to justify it or anything. It's just give me an answer. So we'll and again, if you repeat a movie, I don't care.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the series, name the final girl, and then assign her to another movie. I might have doubles. But that's how I'll keep it straight in my mind, is just name the final girls.
Totally
and
fine.
put them
So I have them all listed. And there's also some movies that have more than one person that survived.
Okay, so I could pick the denim guy from part 7 instead of Tina.
Whatever. You're jumping ahead. Okay, so let's start with Alice.
Okay, Alice.
And if you can provide a rationale,
sure.
A quick one, no one's going to grade you on your answer, just whatever.
Sure. I'm going to put Alice into part 5 because I think that, Mrs. Voorhees was probably the easiest person to kill, followed only by Roy. Neither of them are superhuman at all or, seasoned by living in the wilderness. And I think Alice would stand the best chance of standing up for a long period of time to Roy.
Okay, that's wrong, but whatever.
And you would put her where?
No, I'm just kidding. There's no wrong answers. Oh, we're not going to get into the debate. This will go on forever. Ginny.
Ginny. I'm not going to put her in the reboot because we're not sure the final girl survives. I'm not going to put her in Jason X because I don't want her that far in the future. I don't want her in part 3 because I don't want her to go crazy. I'm going to bump her to part 6 because that's the other movie that I think is closest to actually defeating Jason. She came close with part 2. So I think that she would feel safe knowing he's chained at the bottom of the lake.
I like the way you're approaching this, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but like the one thing to consider, if it helps, is they don't necessarily have to face the same outcome as the person that they're replacing. So if Ginny is replacing Megan and Jason Lives, and again, this might be convoluting it even more, but like you were talking about how in part 3, Chris Higgins goes crazy. Ginny wouldn't necessarily go crazy if Ginny was in part 3. If that helps. You don't have to go back and change your answers. You can approach it however you want, but that's whatever. You look so annoyed right now.
I'm not annoyed. I'm not annoyed at all. Okay. I'm having fun.
Chris Higgins.
Okay, so Chris. She had probably one of the more tragic endings in part 3 because she went completely off her rocker, as comedic as it was. So I think I'm gonna promote her to having kind of a happy weekend getaway in New York City and be in part 8.
I like that. Yeah. Like an alternate reality. Like
right.
Give her a happy ending.
Right.
So to speak. Trish Jarvis.
Or Tommy.
Well, I picked Trish, but
Okay,
yeah,
Trish.
if it helps, you can go with Tommy.
No, I'll go with Trish because I like Trish. Trish is cool. What do I want for Trish? I feel like Trish was at heart a little bit lonely. She made a connection with Rob, but that was very short-lived. So I think I would like her to be back in the back of an ambulance with Denim Guy from Part 7.
It's Denim Guy.
I don't remember what his name was.
Christopher Reeve.
Right, Kevin Spiritus, but I don't remember what his character's name was.
Nick?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Which sounds like Rick, which sounds kind of like Rob. Nope. So, yeah, that's why I want her in Part 7.
I like your the way you kind of picked apart Trish. Like I do think she was lonely when you think about like how excited she was when the party kids showed up next door. She was like, "Oh wow, this is my opportunity to go out and do something. I'm usually just stuck at home with my stupid brother and my mom." Yeah, I like that. It creates more of like a sad, almost tragic version of her rather than she ends up being kind of heroic, but
Oh, absolutely she
yeah,
does. But
I like the different twist on it. Pam.
well, I was hoping you'd pick Dudley because I want Dudley into the future. But if I can't say Pam comes and lives at my house, what do I want for Pam? I think I will have Pam walking off into the sunset at the end of Jason Goes to Hell.
Love it. No arguments. Megan.
Megan. Got to go backwards a little bit. I keep going forwards. I think I'll have Megan in Part 1, where she thinks she's safe. She gets pulled back into the lake, but then winds up in the hospital. We'll ignore what happens to her after that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll place her at the end of Part 1.
Okay. Your favorite, Tina Shepard.
Tina?
And remember, she still has Tina powers, so.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to put her at the end of Freddy versus Jason because I think that she stands the best chance of fighting Freddy.
Now, see, that's something I can get on board with. So then there's like an X factor. It's like Freddy versus Jason versus X, and Tina is that. And it's like something that the two of them, Freddy and Jason, didn't account for. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Answer accepted. Rennie.
I think partly because of what you said earlier and all sympathies to people with mental health issues. I certainly have my share. I know plenty of people who have their own share. Probably everybody has their share. But I think that she's probably the most likely to wind up going batshit crazy like Chris in Part 3.
One of the more forgettable ones, Jessica Kimball.
We'll send her into the future just because I don't... Well, wait. No. I think we'll put her in the reboot. So we don't know if she's alive or dead because that's...
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
No one's invested in her. Cool. I like that one. And then there's technically two final girls, but Rowan and KM14's head.
We'll go with Rowan, I guess.
Sure.
I could see Rowan using the Mrs. Voorhees trick, getting Jason on the ground, but then getting yanked through the window and carted off in an ambulance.
Yeah.
I think that's where I would put her.
Yeah. She's got that scientist background. She's going to be a little bit more analytical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Lori Campbell. Bitch!
Lori would probably be the end of Part 5 where she's threatened by her boyfriend going crazy, or she's in that hospital and someone puts a Jason mask on and scares her again. I think her story is, unfortunately for her, a constant repeat of scares.
Mm-hmm.
It would be her nightmare, and that's what she's going to be forced to live with.
How can we work with that? Okay, so for the last one, I'll give you a little bit more freedom. I'll let you pick between Whitney or Clay or Clay Miller.
I'm gonna pick Whitney.
Okay.
Clay can go fuck himself.
And his stupid motorcycle.
Whitney, I want at the end of part 4 because I want her to be triumphant and have felt like she killed Jason once and for all. But with the tragedy of her brother suffering some sort of mental breakdown because of it. Because fuck Clay.
All right, well, thank you for being patient with my
No,
question.
that was a very interesting wild card question. I salute
Your
the
wild card.
creativity that went into that.
Your wild card question is: do you like Friday the 13th? Yes or no?
Almost as dumb. My disappointing wild card question is: which semi-hostile police officer would you want on the scene of this terrible crime?
Oh,
You can
man.
edit this question into the sequence wherever you feel it works better.
Well, it's going to take me so long to think about it. We might just need to cut here and make it a separate episode. Well, let me think about all the cops that have showed up. So there's Officer Dorf from the first one who couldn't ride a motorcycle.
You could show him how on your little clay bike.
There's Deputy Winslow from part 2.
Don't forget Sergeant Tierney.
Oh yeah, Sergeant Tierney from the first one. Deputy Winslow from part 2. I don't think there were any cops in part 3.
There were cops, but they weren't noteworthy.
Yeah.
Same for part 4, the helicopter pilot.
Yeah, there was a bunch of like cops at the cleanup scene, or not at the cleanup scene, but yeah.
There was the sheriff guy from part 5 that kind of looked like what's from Firefly, Nathan
Fillion.
Fillion.
Yeah.
And there was
It's Deputy Rick Cologne.
Rick Cologne,
Ya
or
bang!
Sheriff Garris, or Officer
Ooh.
Pappas,
Okay. Okay, hold on. We're narrowing it down. So we got Rick Cologne and Sheriff Garris from Jason Lives.
Officer Pappas from Jason Lives, the mustache guy.
Yeah, I don't care about him.
He would tickle your balls too much.
I don't remember any cops in New Blood.
No, there were like EMTs at the end.
Yeah.
There was the Irish cop, the Irish Canadian cop in part 8.
Yeah. Right.
Agent Marcus, part 9.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then there was also the cops in the police station.
Sure, right.
Including Adam Marcus.
And
The
DJ
DJs,
guys.
Yeah.
Herb and Brian or whatever.
Okay, there was no cops in Jason X.
I would give you
Like
the
Wayland
Marine
or yeah,
captain,
right.
The Marine sergeant. I would
Right,
give you
right.
that guy.
I'm not going to take him though. There were the incompetent cops from Freddy vs. Jason. That.
Ugh.
Well,
And then-
hold on. There was Deputy Stubbs, who
Oh, yeah, right.
who showed up at the right, like at the exact right moment.
Yep.
When they were running out of the house. Okay, so
Right.
he's a contender.
And then there's Officer Brack from the reboot,
Yeah. Okay,
who seemed like a genuinely good guy.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, it's going to be down to Deputy Stubbs, and then the whatchamacallit, the dudes from Jason Lives,
Cologne and
Cologne and
Garris.
I mean, Garris is probably the most competent of the three.
Mhm.
You know, I think we learned that he had military training, so he gets it. He's going to know.
Yeah,
how to
you noticed he
respond.
had some medals that indicated he'd seen combat.
Yeah. And then Stubbs was kind of like the doofus rookie, so I'm going to rule him out because he showed up at the right time in Freddy vs. Jason, but I just don't think he would know what to do in the
He
heat
was
of the
smart,
moment.
but he didn't prove to be worth much.
Right. And then there's Rick Cologne. I mean, I'm not going to go with Cologne, even though he's got like the big gun with the
Well, his gun's not that big. It's the laser sight that's...
Well, right, but like that's what I mean. He's overcompensating for his abilities. You know, like if he was a
Or
really
his
good
penis.
cop, right? If he was a really good cop, or if he was a good shot, he wouldn't need all these extra accessories.
right.
It's like all these, you know.
Yeah, as an aside, let's bookmark that.
Okay.
Sidebar. Why in Lethal Weapon 4 did Riggs need a fucking laser sight? The guy could drill someone from 1,000 yards out in high wind with a rifle shot, but he needed a laser sight on his Beretta?
Because it looks cool on camera.
Ugh, that pissed me off.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Rick Cologne.
No, I mean at least it was relevant. I'm gonna go with Sheriff Garris.
Good call.
He's the
Good
most
call.
competent. I was going back and forth between him and Cologne because Cologne's got the big gun, but I was like, I just don't think Cologne would know what to do with the gun in the heat of the moment. I mean, the guy ends up getting locked in a jail cell. He's such a dumbass. So, but Garris was smart. He just got unfortunately cornered and folded
Overmatched. I mean, yeah. Right.
by Jason. So like that's not
Yeah.
poor cop. You know.
Right. He was not incompetent. He
Exactly.
was overmatched.
So yeah,
Garris would have your back.
gonna
That's a
go
good
with
call.
Garris.
That's a good call.
and if he had my back, he might be more inclined
Oh.
to let me date his daughter.
But if he had your back, he'd get folded in half more easily because you have a terrible back. Brian had back surgery, just for all of those of you who didn't remember that detail from earlier seasons.
Yes. Okay, so for the people that are still sticking with us, hi Lynn.
So, like you and me,
Right.
maybe Lynn.
Maybe my wife.
Certainly not my wife at this point.
We are finally down to our last category. Our last
But we're not done yet.
No, well, not quite, but okay. So we've set the stage, we've set the environment, we've established who we're with and who we're bunking with. How do you kill Jason?
Well, I'm not sure I can kill Jason, but I hope to at least stop him long enough for me to get away and not appear in the next movie. We've brought this episode up a lot. I'm going to go with part 5, and I'm going to go with the bulldozer that Dudley drives. But I'm not going to ram into him like Dudley did. I'm going to drive the bulldozer over Jason and park the treads on top of him so that he can't get out quickly and grab me.
Clever girl.
I think he's not going to be able to get that thing off of him for a while, giving me plenty of time to get away.
I took a more practical approach. I imagined that in this Friday the 13th universe that spans across all these different movies, there has to be at least one functional automobile. Okay. I'm going to get in that car and I'm just going to drive away. Like, that's it.
Okay. Downside, he hunted Alice down, and we have no idea how far away she was.
Well, we think it's pretty close. Based
But-
on the fact that he ends back.
I mean,
at-
he's been to New York, dude. He gets around.
Yeah, but we also learned that New York is not that far from Crystal Lake.
True. Fair enough.
Yeah, I know it's kind of a cheap answer, but as is the case with most horror movies, it's always like an inconvenience that prevents someone from
Right.
getting away. Like the phones are dead, or the electricity's out, or the car doesn't start. There's got to be one car, especially when you're at a camp where there's multiple counselors. Like they had to have gotten there somehow.
There are cars in the franchise that have not broken down.
Right. So like let me get in one of those cars and drive away. Like I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to be able to find a road that Jason is not going to be able to step in front of my car and stop me. I'm just going to keep driving and I'll drive as long as I have to and I'll take my chances.
That's a fair and valid answer. You're right. There's no way that every single car would break down. But I feel like with Jason, he would, if he set his sights on you, he would march and march and march across the country, under the ocean. We know he can do that. You'd have to keep driving. You would be safe for 6 months, and then you'd almost like It Follows.
That's the thing. Like as I started to tell you my solution, I started to realize, yeah, I'm going to get away, but I'm never going to be comfortable because I'm always going to be thinking that Jason is going to come after me. I like your version better because the chances are he probably is taken care of and not going to come back. But like all I did was escape. I didn't defeat Jason. So there's a difference. Escaping is a temporary solution, knowing that Jason can come back to me at some point. But I'm already kind of questioning my choice because I think I would rather have come up with a solution that killed Jason so that I could sleep soundly.
The good news is I think that your partner, Ginny, would help you figure out what to do next.
Yes.
And the two of you would live a life on the lam together.
And if not, I would die with a smile on my face.
Exactly. So what's next for the podcast? You might be asking at this point. We're in the home stretch.
As we approach the 3 hour,
Right.
3 hour, 15-minute mark.
We're in the home stretch. Finally. After we posted our final episode of season 12, where we talked about the reboot, a lot of listeners very, very kindly expressed their enjoyment of the show and thought we might do other podcasts or asked what we were going to do next. And some of y'all even suggested we cover some of the fan films that have been made. And we had initially been reluctant to do that because we did not want to shit on something that fans made through their own passion with their own money and their own time. And if we didn't like what they made, it felt a little bit unfair of us to criticize it because we're just fans too. But we wound up on an Instagram live stream, thanks to Loot Fright, with Vincent DeSanti, who made Never Hike Alone, which is probably the gold standard of fan films. And he kind of talked us through it and made us see it a little bit differently and suggested that kind of dialogue would at least help keep the franchise in everyone's minds while we wait for another movie. And that's the only thing that's going on in the fan realm right now is people making their own stuff. So that was a very interesting conversation, and we both took it to heart. So I think that what we'll do in the coming months while we wait for another movie is talk about some of those. Some of them are shorter than 13 minutes, so we're not going to go the standard structure that we have been, but we'll watch them and see if we like them. And, for example, someone who worked on 13 Fanboy, the movie that Deborah Voorhees co-wrote and directed, asked if we would cover that movie. And I had a chance to meet her at the Cincinnati Horror Hound, and she was lovely and delightful, and I got her autograph, and we had a little bit of a chat, and Brian and I both watched that movie recently, and we'll probably talk about that to some extent. So we'll keep the show alive through that method, but we also ended our show with season 12, and that means the next season is season 13, and we have something planned that we think you'll enjoy for our 13th season, and we'll probably put that out in May of 2022 because that's a Friday the 13th.
Yeah, we don't want to give anything away right now. We'll find a time to reveal our plans closer to the date. But if you want a date to look forward to, like Greg said, it'll be May 13th, 2022. That will be the launch of season 13. But between then, we'll find things to keep us busy, whether it's the fan films or random reactions to trailers that are coming up, or 13 Fanboy or whatever. So stay subscribed and be patient. We don't really have any schedule in mind in terms of like how often we're going to be revealing or releasing new episodes, but we're not going anywhere, and I'm glad that we're not going anywhere because I don't know what I would do with all my free time. So thank you to all the people that did reach out at the end of season 12 and were like, no, don't go. What are you going to do next? That's really nice to hear, because that's why we keep going. If there was crickets at the end of season 12, maybe we would have taken a hint and just, walked into the sunset like Jessica Kimball. But we're going to keep going. We're going to find things to do. It's not going to be in the 13-minute format always, but we'll find things to talk about.
Yeah, and it's been a surprising amount of fun to interact with some of you on the social media feeds from literally from around the world, which surprised the hell out of me. I had no idea Jason had a reach that spans the globe. It seems like such a niche property, but there's something about it that people seem to like no matter where they are. And chatting with some of you on comments and the jokes that you make and some of the stuff you call back to is always a hoot. So thank you for that. And a couple of people I do want to shout out by name. We've mentioned him before, but our theme song is from Christopher Holland. And I having just seen part 3 again recently, I couldn't help but notice that I like the version that he did that we're using on our show even more than the one that's in the movie. It sounds wrong to me when I hear the one that Harry Manfredini co-wrote. So thanks again to him for letting us use his version of that song as our show's identity.
Yeah, it really changed the tone, I think, of our podcast. Like, I think we started using it probably with season 3.
Yep.
And we were just using kind of like stock music for the first 2 seasons. And I think it just kicks the episodes off on a higher energy.
Yep.
And it's great. I'm so glad that we were able to reach out to him and he obliged to let us use it for the podcast. And hopefully he saw a bump in his traffic with his other music. And if you haven't checked out his other music, you absolutely should. He's got some really great stuff out there. But,
for sure.
But yeah, I love that theme song.
I want to thank longtime friend of the show. He's been with me since the beginning, Justin, who has plenty of very entertaining opinions about the Friday the 13th franchise that I hope you'll get to hear at some point, Brian. But he also gifted me a lovely comic book foil stamped cover of a Jason X comic book that has been slabbed and graded by the CGC company. I think it's a 9.3 or something like that, and he gleefully found it in a box at Mile High Comics in Denver and was laughing so hard that he was telling everyone in the store why he was so excited and about our show. He's a great dude, and he's a dyed-in-the-wool nerd, and I love that guy, and I hope at some point you'll have a chance to meet him. I also want to thank Jason B., who is a member of my wife's extended family, who graciously has designed a logo for us to use as kind of our permanent branding between seasons. We've been using a logo that reflects the movie we're discussing, but since we're in a little bit of a dark period right now, we'll have this as kind of our default identity. And he's a designer, and it looks a lot snazzier than the one that we started with, despite both of our best efforts.
There are tons of other people that we interact with on a regular basis on social media that are too many to name. You know who you are. I think we try to be really good about responding to comments and suggestions. So we appreciate it, and we thank you for sticking around.
Absolutely.
And, we hope you continue to stick around. It sounds like you will, so that's great. In the meantime, you've heard the spiel. Go on to whatever podcast delivery system you enjoy and rate and review and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out. As we see those numbers go up, it helps us to validate what we're doing, but it also helps search engine stuff and all that. So anything you can say or in a review or just rating, we really appreciate, and we assure you that we are not going anywhere. It might be a little bit different from what you're used to, but just know that eventually we're going to come back with something that is what you're familiar with. And hopefully that means that there's a new Friday the 13th movie out there. So,
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing about reviews, we've had nothing but positive feedback, and so that's been fantastic, and we're really, really grateful for that. But if you want to leave a 3-star review with constructive criticism, we would love to hear that, too.
Yeah. Like, hey,
if-
maybe don't do 3.5-hour long episodes. Or
Maybe. Maybe we tell too many stories from our shared childhood.
stop talking about Fast and Furious.
So that not valid, and I would ignore you. But
Right, we would block
okay,
you.
you're entitled to your opinion. But yeah, I mean, constructive criticism is also welcome. So whatever you got, we want to hear it, and just keep being cool, because we've had a lot of fun doing this and talking with y'all.
So until next time, whenever that is, you
You're
are
all
all
doomed.